Hello, my name is Three, or at least my nickname is Three in game, and I am from the team The Shrining, and I recently won the Masters Championship. So I'm here doing a quick deck tech, mainly of the two decks that I actually created. And these are Conquest decks. A lot of people look at deck techs and try to find ladder decks, and I'd suggest some changes to it in order to make them ladder viable, which I hopefully will manage to explain during this video. So first of the deck, the only deck I actually lost properly to. I did suffer lose on my artifact deck in the finals, but that was mostly due to a bug. It was essentially a one game that I got thrown away from me because of a turn skip that happened all of a sudden for no reason. Given the tempo of the matchup at that point, there was just no coming back, even though essentially there is no coming back if your turn gets skipped in most games, except if you're playing my Enoch deck, but we'll get to that. First of all, we have the kaainu list, and there's going to be better people doing deck techs on this, because it's not my list, it's not a deck that I'm super comfortable with. It's an aggressive tempo kind of deck, and if you don't win with the cards you have, you kind of run yourself out of cards, and hopefully you'll win before you're out of cards. Lots of Might Emblems, no Holy Radiances here because I have them in my other lists. Put in some landslides instead. Essentially worse, but have to. Star of the deck is Ambush Strike, given how 1 mana can give you a 3 or 4 mana creature, or can save a 3 or 4 mana creature, or have you kill a 3 or 4 mana creature for free. You have to always play around it. That's one of the strategies that I think got me very far in the tournament, allowed me to win the tournament, is playing around Ambush Strike, because so many times if you have the space to do it, you should always play around it, because the card is just so strong, and the tempo it can give you is just amazing. Other than that, it's just the traditional Valor stuff. You've seen it on Valor for the last few weeks. Anyways, so onto my own list that I've been working on. Amalric only took that loss in the finals due to the turn skip, and it's a really strong list for what I prepared against, because I was pretty sure that people would be running Amalric, Kaainu, and Priest, and essentially everyone ran 2 of those. Almost everyone, not everyone, but yeah, 2 of those lists, and a third one. There was usually some kind of control like OTH or something that's used in New Horizons. Some people, Cool ran the Spina, I think, and there was some Grand Reunion decks. Yeah, my lists, I kind of focused on not dealing with those, not dealing with any kind of control lineups, anything that seemed really odd. I wanted to focus on making decks that dealt with Kaainu Sprouts, Amalric Soldiers, Amalric Sprouts, or Amalric Priests, and Herm Priests or Tempo, or whatever. Just these Tempo creature decks. And so the first list for this is Amalric Artifacts, because it has more value, so it can sustain itself while still managing to trade evenly on tempo, as long as people do not counter it. But having a very stale meta for the last week allowed me to make the prediction that people would have started removing Bark Convoys, because some people actually ran it, and I would think that people at most would run maybe 2 off, because the Unicorn is so much better for tempo and can be played earlier and can be played more efficiently. It's half the mana cost essentially to remove a spell while playing a creature. Test of Time I was a little bit worried about, but no one ended up running that. So artifacts. First of all, Holy Radiance does not need much of an explanation. Use the first mode way much more than the second one, because to remove Might Emblems off a Triangelica board is just an amazing card. 2 mana can do so much damage to a board. And then of course there's the anti-tempo thing, but that's kind of feels like a win more at times, because a lot of boards can actually protect themselves from the Holy Radiance. But really strong card, and it's one of the best board wipes at the moment, especially in Order. Can be countered by the hero, which I forgot to mention first. Amazing here. You have Celestial Blossom to get creatures out for free. You have so many ways of building a board that you don't that like accumulates value, like Steel Sentience or Dwarven Mortars, and protecting those, keeping them there, is very important. So just in general, amazing card, especially paired with guards. Combat trick that can either save you by blocking. It blocks a lot of Herm Priest from healing a lot, and just in general, it's a combat trick that can a Dwarven Mortar can use. You can put one blocker in, then exhaust the blocker with a Dwarven Mortar. It's a great card. Wish I could have more. Only have 2 of both of these cards because I run 2 of them in my Enoch list. Innkeeper, in general, is also a very strong card. 3 mana, you can kill an Angelic Temple and get a 2/2. You can dig back things if you need more value in your list, and also it makes mill matchups way easier. Not that I was overly worried, I just really liked this card, and I felt I didn't need more than 2 in my Enoch list, so I just threw them in here. Soul Projection, also needed more clear, needed more high value removal, and just having the hero power trading with his board and then soul projectioning something that's got the hero power on. Very strong, very good clear. I found out because people were running a lot of combat tricks, you could actually play around the combat tricks a lot by making subpar trades and then soul projectioning to clear, or just using soul projection to clear to begin with. Very nice card. I'm calling all the cards very nice. This one was situational, I suppose. But it does exhaust anything that gets hit by damage, which is just great for tempo, and you might actually need that against kaainu spells and the similar, because maybe if he's got a huge creature, he will soak a lot of damage with that creature, and then it gets exhausted at least, so you can swing through. Celestial Blossom, great card, can be found by Contraptionist. For tempo, it allows you to run early plays that get Dwarven Mortars out or Steel Sentience out turn 2, turn 3, and also later on just like overwhelming the board, because maybe if they spend a turn to deal with what you normally would place out in the board, if you having Celestial Blossoms, you might actually play another creature that they don't have time to deal with, don't have resources to deal with, and all of a sudden you have tempo. It's a way of catching up to these really fast Sprouts decks and Amalric decks. And with Contraptionist, you only need 2 really. I never had, like, because you're losing cards, but given that you have so much value in the deck, it's okay for you. Moving on, Drone. Artifact creature can be played with Celestial Blossom, doesn't really happen that much. Good 1-drop that with Renovation Facility threatens a lot more on turn 2. So playing a 2/2 into a drone drop turn 1 is very risky, because it can swing into and become a automaton with just Renovation Facility and lots of stuff. And even late game, just having drones in your graveyard means that you can just start drawing free Steel Sentience or airships or Dwarven Mortars just from you spend 2 mana and you essentially get a card back. So also nice. I'm running Militant Citadel, which is very relevant for, well, it's Innkeeper and the drone. New Horizons ramp synergizes well with Celestial Blossom. Like if you are on the draw, turn 1 New Horizons, turn 2 you either mana up a New Horizons again, which is great if you have 2, or you just go up another level, then you can Celestial Blossom and drop a Steel Sentience. Even drop a drone too, because you have 1 more mana, or you just spend 2 mana of the Celestial Blossom. Very good, because you need 4 levels for Steel Sentience to get maximum value. Not all games you will have it, but yeah, it works. Renovation Facility, it has a million combat tricks. It's weak to Holy Radiance, and essentially it might be difficult to play around all the time. I felt like I had some times where I got like really wrecked by a Holy Radiance, but usually recovered. As I said, I never lost a game with this, a proper game. Like that was I'm still a little bit salty about that, losing a game because my turn just gets skipped. So all of a sudden, that was very frustrating. Like I was just sitting there trying to Divine Offering. I was just confused when he started swinging at me. Like, why can't I Divine Offering? Yeah, that was not a good feeling. But winning made it better. Contraptionist finds Renovation Facility, finds Celestial Blossom, can draw your card. Can be used to trigger with Dwarven Mortar, is chump. or with Amalek hero power, it still threatens a 2/2. It threatens to not even trade into 2/2. So it can like essentially be used as a 2/3 or 2/1,000,000, I suppose. But yeah, the 2/3. When you do like turn 2 contraption is he can't drop a 2/2 on the front line because you can just go, oh, I'll just eat it. Flash Freeze works with Ardent Mortar. Might have run more if it wasn't because I have them in my Enoch lineup. Connection, losing connection. Ancient Wisdom, same thing with the Enoch lineup. Airship, very good. You can have it backline renovation facility and you can swing in with it next turn. Same thing with Roaring Water if you drop the renovation facility. And essentially, if you have drones in your hand, you can just discard the drones and then use them to pick up your artifacts creatures. So it's just a lot of value. Also with Timea, this thing will be able to swing for 2, will be able to trade for 2, or you just, if someone doesn't plan on blocking this one, Timea will draw you a card, which is sweet. Steel Sentient, yeah, they're the bomb of the deck. They just accumulate lots of value and become ginormous. Like I've won so many games with like a 10/10 Steel Sentient, or 9. No, I've won so many games with like 3 or 4 10/10 Steel Sentient swinging. As long as you have this on the board, you don't really have to worry about value trading. As long as you keep it on the board, and then you get like 2, and then you get 3, and then you just never stops. And at that point, like they can have as many Bark Convoys as they want. You kind of get screwed over anyways. Dwarven Mortar, excellent drop with Celestial Blossom early game. Also way to eat 2/2s and just do a few extra damage. One renovation facility upgrades it to Steel Sentience, just having it backline at like turn 2 or turn 3, depending on if you have Horizons or not, or if you're on the draw, can threaten a lot, and not very many people play around it. I've eaten a lot of 2/3 spouts, having a Dwarven Mortar on back row, and then just renovation facility and swinging in, whilst Kaainu maybe have a creature in place that gets the 2/3 spout and then has a creature underneath himself or something like that, with a Gurko in this example. Yeah, a lot of fun. Also accumulates value by just sitting on the board, and that's the thing. These tempo decks don't run that many answers to something on the board. They want a Master Hunter plus Might Emblem to deal with things on the back row, usually, or like a Ray of Righteousness, which I don't run in this list because I have them in the other one. So Luxio, just extremely powerful card. Stats are good, it's flying, and denying hero power abilities is extremely relevant, mainly against Almaric and Herm, partly against Kaainu, even though like when Kainu's hero ability is relevant, like beyond the first couple of turns, you have most likely already won or lost the game. But excellent in the sense that it just the stats and the block can really shut down certain matchups. It's just so hard to deal with, like unless they have Ray, of course. There is I'll go on to the place we'll hopefully cover in some other time. Okay, so to the spicy deck, yeah, in general the artifact deck it's a lot of fun to play because there's a lot of things you can do with different hands. Usually you can maintain pretty large hand size while still trading on the board. You're just trying to eke out to get to the late game where you really shine. So many of these cards are just meant to give you the tempo and the survivability needed to get to the point where you can start dropping the serious amounts of sentience and get them back with drones to drop more. Like I've had matchups where I just never stopped dropping the sentience, and they would deal with the first 3. They would deal with the first 4, but eventually, like an airship that becomes a sentient, or they run out of answers. And yeah, March of the Machines, Matrix is coming, Skynet, etc. So Enoch, this is the more spicy list. Like just a few days before, I was trying to figure out what to go for because I didn't want to split up all the OP cards, or I wanted to make lists with only the OP cards like Advanced Diaries, Artifacts, Almaric, and Kaainu, but that wouldn't really work. And I was trying things on ladder and I was losing a lot, and I got really frustrated with the meta because I was trying to make Kaainu work and I was trying to like practice the list and I didn't enjoy it. So I just decided to go, I'm just gonna go as much anti creature as I can, anti-meta, the current meta as I can. It worked out. This list was undefeated, like really in the sense, and not even like figuratively. And it's an interesting list. You start off with Enoch because you want to be able to sacrifice a creature, partly because you want him in the graveyard, partly because you want the hit points. Not really to swing in. The 1/1 doesn't do much for you in this list. Innkeepers, because you're going to be self-milling, so you want to restore that. Also, you kill off angelic temples, you can silence Diogens and force them to like kill their own time. Yeah, it's just a really annoying card. It's good against sprouts as well. But then Triangelica, you remove a Might Emblem as well with it, which is really good against Sprout because that gives it 2/2 less stats. It's amazing, and having 2 is enough because you're running in still lives to get them back. Holy Radiance, same explanation as before. For ladder, I would have so many more of these, as in 2 more. But it's a great card. It just removes my emblems, and in this list, I would more often use the second option to just prevent them from developing in the board, because you want to delay until you have like 5 mana, 3 aspects. At that point, most creature decks are already doomed. It's just no. Speaking of delaying, here's Pacify, and just a great card to delay. I mean, it does put it back in the deck, so it does prevent the milling win condition. But what I found out, what many people assume that this deck's win condition is milling your opponent. It's not really. It's essentially stalling, so that these creature lists that are very tempo heavy, very I mean, not high value, but high power early drops that lead the curve out into a win before like turn 6 or 7. Like a very, very, very stable, a very, very strong foundation of a creature deck that just like shoves you into no, but like steamrolls you before turn 7. And Pacify is a great card to just deal with most of the early drops. Like turn 2, you can drop, and you can use Pacify on any of those early cards. And Radiance, of course, probably have 4 of these, 2 of these in a ladder deck where weren't limited to having in other decks. Word of Grace, also a filler card. It's alright, and it also, since you're threatening Pacify, guards, and Word of Grace when you leave 2 mana up, the Word of Grace makes it so your opponent is in the position of going, okay, maybe I shouldn't attack because Pacify. But if he Word of Grace is in that case, then I'm losing so much damage. So you can kind of, if someone doesn't swing with a 2/2 because you might have a Pacify, the Word of Grace gives you more cycle and more life, obviously. And this deck really needs to cycle because there's a few cards that are integral to like having a mid game. I'm saying like a lot. I notice it myself, but it's hard to stop. Anyways, so there's Gods. Same reason as before. This deals with protected creatures. I thought that Temple Guard would be more of an issue than it was, and Guard was designed to deal with those guys because it's so annoying with a Temple Guard that's a 4/2 or 3/1 that just swings in and you cannot do anything about it. You don't draw your Holy Radiance, and the rest is all targeted removal here. So, but now he just ended up protecting me from large swings and also the heal condition from the priests, because if they're swinging with a 3/3 or 4/4 Cavalry Field Captain Temple or something, you guardsing it up can prevent them from reaching the win condition before you can just lock down the board by having them discard their hand and everything. Another discard outland draws you a card. Hopefully it's a 2-for-1, otherwise it's just a cycle. It's a good filler card if you hold a Radiance and clear their board, or they're not developing that much onto the board. It's a good card to just cycle out of your hand. You're spending your mana because you want to get to like the bottom 20 cards of your deck, and then you sit there with Innkeeper and Instill and just keep adding the value cards back into your deck through Innkeeper. One cool interaction actually that I forgot to mention is if you instill an Innkeeper and then a Mesmerizing Spirit or whatever, you can actually get the Instill back into your deck that you use to instill the Innkeeper. So there's like an infinite value engine going on there. Not really value maybe, but infinite. Like your deck won't run out of cards ever, and your opponent's deck will. So Ray of Righteousness is also a card you just deal with large threats. It can deal with Holy Radiance occasionally, but I never really had that issue. I wasn't too committed to my board ever. I didn't want to have more than 1 or 2 Void Touch subordinates sitting on the board at any one time. And Steel Marine Creeper and Mesmerizing Spirits are chump blockers. I never really had to use them for anything else. I'm targeting these creature decks. And yeah, lots of 2-drops for Instill to pick up. Innkeeper, Mesmerizing Spirit, Void Touch subordinate. And by lots, I mean we're gonna self-mill them, we're gonna cycle, so we're gonna find these 10 cards. We're gonna find a lot of them. So Instill is just a really great card and fits the colors perfectly. And then we move on to the Snake. Everyone's calling it the Snake deck at this point. I called it Ebola Knock for it being absolutely atrocious to play against. I had some testing doing with other Shrine members and they all hated it. And eventually, especially when I managed to get it to work properly, first it kind of just sucked. But yeah, this card is when you have black, like Corruption in play, you, at worst case, you pretty much always 1-for-1 with this card. And usually it prevents a lot of attacks, and then eventually when they do attack it, trade with it or attack through it, it transforms a creature and it blocks a lot of damage. So it's got Deadly but in blue, and it's another win condition. It's the decay win condition, which hurries the process along that isn't super important, because you have this infinite deck with a lot of cycle and card advantage that lets you run your opponent out of cards. But we'll get to that a bit more. Primal Evolution with these 2 cards together is basically remove a creature, draw a card. Just insanely powerful, and I could get that like turn 3 or turn 2 even some rounds, and it's just unfair. It's an awful card to play against, and an extremely satisfying card to play yourself. Like this deck, most of the time you're just sitting there, it's just like the most yeah, if you're a sadist of some kind, like you have this tiny bit of Schadenfreude in you, then yeah, this is definitely the deck for you. Power Discharge, cycles, shock, freeze, deal 1 damage, all effects are irrelevant. You want to clear the board, you want to weaken the board, even if they can't swing with their current board. Power Discharge, you just keep trying to clear the board as much as possible or evolve their board. They only have creatures, that's their win condition. Or at least that's the deck I targeted and worked out. So I did have I was slightly afraid that people would run more control, and then this deck would be completely useless, because, for example, 1 turn heal, this deck I would say have a 99.5%, or actually have a 0.05% chance of winning against that deck, because you don't have any way of, like, you don't have a win condition, and they're just going to be way faster at healing to max, I suppose. No, this is a stall deck, a grinder deck, and you don't really get enough. Like, there's a grind mage in other games. Anyways, Eleanor gets you back in still, lets you cast spells, whilst it also puts a body on the board. It lets you get evolution back when you really need it, or just like instill back, ray back. There's lots of spells that are situational here that are really nice to be able to get back. Power Discharge, get Power Discharge back, freeze if you have another ping effect. A lot of fun. Also, this inevitability factor is built more, is further built up by having Eleanor, of course. Flash Freeze, yeah. Coupled with Power Discharge and Holy Radiance and Guards is just another combat trick that just having Flash Freeze in your deck and your opponent knowing that, like, there's also the kind of, they have to play around it, and if they don't, you might punish them so hard, and it's a very, very good card. But not running that many because I have a few in my Amalric list. Ancient Wisdom, same, only running 2 because I have them in my Amalric list. It's good for when people don't commit to the board and you have the space. Like if you have a Void touched out and they're not swinging, you can just draw cards and further put a clock on them, because you're finding answers to the threats that they will draw, like the future threats. And finally, mesmerizing spirits. Also, like ancient wisdom, this is a 2 for 1 for 2, because most of the time you're making them discard a card, and hopefully you're trading. Worst case scenario, you're jumping. But given that these are value decks that commit a lot of their cards to they commit a lot of the cards to swinging in, you end up having like, okay, but if you jump a spout that they commit 2 cards to, like with a Gurko or something, if you jump it twice with mesmerizing spirits and then you kill it for free with a power discharge or with a parallel evolution. A parallel evolution with Gurko is amazing, by the way, because the Gurko doesn't leave the card. It's just a 1/4 void touch subordinate with a Gurko underneath it. Yeah, it's just satisfying. Anyways, you discard so many cards with this. With instills, you can get them back, and eventually you can see that in all the games on stream. My opponent is in top deck mode. Like, I had this one game where I don't remember who it was, had an Angel Blessed Knight. I think it might have been the finals. Anyways, had an Angel Blessed Knights on the board, and I used Parallel Evolution to turn it into a Void Touched, and he's sitting on 2 levels and eventually 0 cards, and he keeps drawing like Gomer and Namir, and he just can't play it because I evolutioned the Angel Blessed Knight. And it's just the most awful feeling when you draw a value card and then the opponent plays a Mesmerizing Spirit and you're in top deck mode. Yeah, see, this deck is very demoralizing to play against, and a lot of fun to play with if you have been getting smashed by the Kaainu and Amalric lists for a while. Like this, they had an underdog battle going up, but that was just, yeah. So that's essentially my decks. We might be doing another video where we go over some of the plays that people saw that considered very weird during stream. I've reviewed like the stream moments, and some people had some comments on some plays, and so I might be able to explain those, or I'll just show you a couple of games for this, but that will be for another time. So this is 3 from The Shining saying thanks for watching, I suppose. This was fun.